There's nothing more important now to stop this war because the suffering in Gaza is unbearable and cannot go on like this. And the international community cannot let it happen. And here comes an American president that not only wants the war to be over, he pushes Israel to do more, to kill more. He pushes Israel toward another genocide. That's the meaning of his impossible conditions.
Where do President Trump's statements about Gaza, about forcing the Palestinian people to go to Egypt and Jordan, about the West Bank, where do those statements leave the hope of a two-state solution? Don't Trump's statements suggest that a two-state solution is not part of his policy, it's not part of his vision for the future of this part of the world?
That was very clear. And that's why if I want to look at Trump is not only provoking the Palestinians' rights, but he is also insulting and provoking all the international community who had been advocating for the two-state solution. And he is basically killing and eliminating the option of the two-state solution.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. What is the future of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire? If it collapses, what will that mean for both the Palestinian people as well as the Israeli hostages? And what should we make of President Trump's statements about the future of Gaza as well as Egypt and Jordan, whose aid he's threatened to cut off if they don't accept the Palestinian people from Gaza? Finally, what does all of this mean for the prospects of a two-state solution and President Trump's hopes of an Israeli-Saudi peace accord? Today, we present both an Israeli and Palestinian view. My first guest is the internationally acclaimed award-winning columnist from Israel's Haaretz newspaper, Gideon Levy. Mr. Levy, let's start with the Hamas-Israel ceasefire. Just an hour ago, Al Jazeera and BBC reported that Hamas will go ahead with the ceasefire deal this Saturday. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu has denied that the deal is on track. And certainly President Trump's insistence that all the hostages must be returned and not later than 12 noon on Saturday has not been accepted by Hamas. So as we talk, where would you say the ceasefire stands? Are you an optimist or are you a pessimist?
There is no place here for optimism or pessimism because we are dealing with some unexpected factors, and mainly the unexpected phase of Donald Trump, who can say one thing today and the opposite tomorrow, and you don't know what does he mean seriously and what is just a lip service. The matter of fact is that it seems that on Saturday, 3 more hostages and few dozens of Palestinian prisoners will be released. That's a wishful thinking because Hamas declared so. Israel, backed by the really not normal, crazy spirit of Donald Trump, pushing Israel to renew the war. There's no other explanation to his behavior, putting impossible conditions on Hamas. This might damage the whole thing, but I still hope that people will be reasonable and this will prevail.
There are, of course, over 36 hours to Saturday. So if there are further problems and the ceasefire collapses, and that has to always be a possibility, what would that mean for the Palestinian people? What would it mean for Israeli hostages?
So first of all, let's use the language of Donald Trump. He spoke about gates of hell, which will open over the Palestinians. Mr. Trump, I guess, is not updated. The gates of hell were opened over the Palestinians 15 months ago. And ever since then, it didn't stop. They met hell already, but he wants them to be in a worse hell. I mean, there are always many opportunities. this whole way of handling this crisis is a very explosive one, a dangerous one. And I'm very, very worried what will come out of all those hollow declarations which have only one purpose: to incite, to heat up the atmosphere, and to avoid any kind of reasonable settlement and ending the war, which should be the biggest task now. There's nothing more important now to stop this war, because the suffering in Gaza is unbearable and cannot go on like this. And the international community cannot let it happen. And here comes an American president that not only wants the war to be over, he pushes Israel to do more, to kill more. He pushes Israel toward another genocide. That's the meaning of his impossible conditions. There is an agreement, it should be respected, and I hope it will continue. I'm very skeptical that this agreement will continue much after coming Saturday, because the second phase, I don't see it being implemented. I didn't see it before Trump was in office, but now with the support that he gives, the push that he gives to Netanyahu, I don't see the second phase being implemented. Let's just hope that Saturday another 3 people, another few dozens of Palestinians will be released.
But what
I don't expect more than this. I don't expect more than this.
But what happens, Mr. Levy, after Saturday if there is no phase 2? Does that mean that the hostages who are still in Hamas custody or Islamic Jihad custody will be foregone and forgotten forever?
Or even murdered, because the moment that they will not be valuable for the Hamas, when Hamas will realize that they have no value, he wouldn't bother to continue to keep them. Yes, Israel and Donald Trump are playing with the life of hostages and of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza.
And what would be the response of public opinion in Israel if Netanyahu doesn't go ahead with phase 2? And if the hostages are killed, what will be the response from your countrymen?
As it was until now, divided. Netanyahu's supporters, the right-wingers, the radical right-wingers, and some of the others want to see this war being renewed, because they understand that Israel achieved very little in this war. So, it is like a gambler who goes to the casino, and when he starts to lose, he always thinks the next round will be the big hits. Same for Israel. 15 months were not enough. Israel, and I think that a small majority of Israelis would support it. That's one of the problems, that there is no opposition to this war in Israel. There is an opposition to Netanyahu, very vocal. There's really a protest for releasing the hostages. There is no meaningful opposition to the war as it is.
So it is a very grim, bleak situation as you seem to feel and describe it.
I'm afraid so.
Let's then come to President Trump's statements. He's repeatedly said America will take over and own Gaza. He wants to make it the Riviera of the Middle East. He said Egypt and Jordan must accept the Palestinian people from Gaza, and he's even additionally threatened to cut off aid if they don't. What do you make of those statements?
I'm afraid to say that I make out of it a very depressing conclusion, namely that Donald Trump is not a serious man. Because nobody can even imagine, how can this be implemented? What does it mean the United States takes Gaza? How does it take? He says he will not send troops. He will not invest money. So how will it get into America's control? Through some spirits, through telepathy? I really don't understand what he wants at all, and I'm not sure he knows what he wants. So it is so far-fetched that even discussing it seriously with you is ridiculous.
But he's gone one step further. He insists that Jordan and Egypt must accept what is it, something like 2.3 million Palestinians from Gaza. And he says that if they don't, he will cut off aid. Now, the problem is both Jordan and Egypt have repeatedly said that they will not and cannot accept them. Their own internal situation will not allow them to do so. However, on Tuesday, while sitting beside President Trump in the White House, King Abdullah of Jordan did say that the Arab nations will come up with a counter proposal, but he gave no details of that proposal whatsoever. I know that in a couple of days, towards the end of this month, there is an Arab summit taking place in Cairo. Do you have any sense of what you believe the final position taken by Jordan and Egypt will be? And could Trump arm twist them into doing what they don't want to do?
It's not that they don't want to do, they cannot do. Both countries have major economical problems, and also major social problems. And the regimes in both countries is not very stable. And the whole setup in both countries is not very stable. It can explode to all kinds of directions. To bring Donald Trump into this very delicate and sensitive setup and to start to threaten and to blackmail. What he does, he wants to blackmail them. Really like a mafia. If you don't do what I say, I'm not going to pay you. This will not have any positive consequences. Now, one thing is clear. 2.3 million Palestinians will not be removed to Jordan and Egypt, period. All the rest, we will see. Will he cut their aid? If he cuts their aid, so the United States will lose two friendly and relatively stable regimes in the Middle East, because it can turn into a chaos, because those two countries are facing, as I said, enormous challenges, mainly Egypt, but also Jordan.
But the bizarre statements made by President Trump go one step further. Last week, whilst sitting at a press conference with your own Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House, President Trump seemed to suggest that in 4 weeks' time, now presumably only 3 weeks' time, America could possibly accept Israel's annexation of the West Bank. What do you make of that?
I'm less hysterical about this because the West Bank was annexed to Israel a long time ago, de facto. And he didn't do it in his first term. He promised and then he changed his mind. He might also not do it this time. But would he do it? I don't see this as the end of the world. Unlikely transferring 2.3 million Palestinians, which looks to me crazy and catastrophic. The annexation is unlikely. Most of the people who think that the annexation is something dramatic. It's not dramatic at all. By the way, annexation can be also cancelled very easily. The facts on the ground are that Israel had annexed already the West Bank. There is no room for any rights to the Palestinian people in the West Bank. On the contrary, they are pushed to the corner more and more. There is no law and order. Nobody protects them. So what does it mean annexating? I mean, okay, it will be a big drama, but on the ground, not much will change.
I have to ask you this. President Trump's comments about Gaza, about taking it over and controlling it, about driving the Palestinian people away, about annexing the West Bank, have been described by many as outrageous. But is there a streak of, forgive my language, madness?
Look, I'm not a psychiatrist. It's not reasonable. The way he does it, even if he had good ideas, you don't just throw ideas to the air without having any clue how to implement them. If you have a good idea, you have to come with a plan, with some work being done before. You couldn't just throw your, I mean, the fact that you are the strongest politician on earth doesn't make your ideas more implementable, because finally someone has to implement those ideas. And they're impossible. Impossible. You cannot take 2.3 million people, and put them on trucks and send them to Jordan and Egypt. How will it go? Where will they stay in Egypt and in Jordan? What will they do there? I mean, it's a sick way of thinking, that it's enough to say, oh, it will be good, and it will be good for them, and they will not want to come back. Above all, it's not serious.
Where then does this leave all hopes or even chances of a two-state solution? Don't President Trump's statements suggest that a two-state solution is not part of his policy, it's not part of his vision for this part of the Middle East?
It's not the first time that we talk, and it's not the first time that I tell you the two-state solution is dead long time ago, and we better stop mentioning it. Because mentioning it gives a false idea that we can still have a two-state solution. Israel never meant to enable a Palestinian state, and now there is already no room for a Palestinian state with 700,000 Jewish settlers in the West Bank that nobody is going to evacuate, and without their evacuation, there is no viable state. There is a Bantustan, but not a viable state. We better have new ideas and new visions, namely a one-state solution, namely a democracy between the river and the sea. We'll not get into it now. It's complicated. It is not a simple solution. It means end of Zionism, end of the dreams of a Jewish state and a Palestinian state. But the only alternative to a democracy between the river and the sea is apartheid between the river and the sea. And I think the international community knows very well which of the two alternatives is the preferable one. In any case, I don't see a third alternative.
What about President Trump's dream of an Israel-Saudi accord? The Saudis have made it clear that without a Palestinian state, they will not agree to a peace deal with Israel. Has Trump overlooked that, or do you think Trump believes that he can force the Saudis to drop their insistence on a Palestinian state?
Here I'm more optimistic, because the Saudis don't really care about the Palestinians. It's a kind of lip service. And if we will give them the lip service, there are stronger interests for the Saudis rather than having a Palestinian state or not having it. They need to save face, but not much more than this. If I would have been a Palestinian, and I know that most of the Palestinians think so, I wouldn't trust Saudi Arabia as the big defender of the Palestinian people. It was never a big defender of the Palestinians, and it will not be. And I think the interest of both countries, Israel and Saudi Arabia, and obviously the United States, are stronger than all the sentiments toward the Palestinians. So I think here there might be found a formula in which Israel will declare all kinds of hollow declarations, and there will be even a timetable for renewing the negotiations, God knows between whom and whom. But I believe that the interests, the political, geopolitical, economical, military interests will prevail, will be much stronger than the care to the Palestinians, and finally there will be peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel.
And do you have any sense of how soon this could happen? I presume we would need at least a year or two between now and it's happening.
I don't know. I really don't know. Look, with the Abraham Accord, it went quite quickly. If everyone wants it, it can be within, because it is peace for peace. It's not peace for anything else. So why should it take a year? There's not much to negotiate. They only must find a formula which will save the face of the Saudis, so that they are not betraying the Palestinian cause, even though they will betray the Palestinian cause. I have no doubts about it.
My last question, Mr. Levy. Donald Trump has 4 years more as president ahead of him. You've seen the dramatic, unpredictable, surprising way in which his presidency has begun. How concerned are you about what might happen over the remaining 4 years?
You can't tell, because as childish as he is, he might also lose interest in most of his ideas after he will realize that those ideas are hard to be implemented or even impossible. He will not declare war over Denmark to get Greenland. He will not declare war on Panama, or, I mean, all those ideas. And for sure, he will not declare war on Israel if Israel will not follow his advices, or if the Palestinians will not follow his ideas. So I think that's a very childish enthusiasm of the first weeks of his term, and I will not be surprised if very soon he will lose interest in all those ideas, because he will realize that it doesn't lead him to anywhere. Maybe one of all those ideas will be implemented. He surely will deport many immigrants from the United States, because this is possible. He surely will close the border much more than before with Mexico, because this is possible. But as for the other ideas, I don't see them happening, because, as I said, he's not a serious man, and all those ideas are not based on a real plan. They are just, he wakes up in the morning and he has an idea, and then he thinks that everything can go smoothly without any preparation.
Mr. Levy, I thank you for your insight and your interpretation, in particular of President Trump. I think many people will be both reassured by what you said, but also a little perplexed, because he is, after all, the President of America, the most powerful man in the world. And if he says these things which he dreams up and then you can't take them seriously, many will find that extremely disturbing and worrying. I thank you for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe.
And thank you for having me. It's always interesting and inspiring to talk to you. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
My guest is a professor from the Arab American University of Palestine in Ramallah, Dalal Iriqat. Professor Iriqat, let's start with the Hamas-Israel ceasefire. First, Hamas said it would not free more hostages unless Israel stops violating the terms of the ceasefire. Then President Trump said if Hamas does not release all the hostages by 12 noon on Saturday, the ceasefire would be cancelled, and he added, "Let hell break out." Shortly after that, Prime Minister Netanyahu said Israel would withdraw from the ceasefire if Hamas doesn't release all the hostages by Saturday, and again, he's called up Israeli reservists. So where does the ceasefire stand? And do you believe this is its death knell?
Well, thank you very much. Let's start by putting a framing for what we are witnessing. This is not really a ceasefire. This was a deal that focused on the prisoners and hostage exchange. We did warn since the beginning, as we applauded the deal, that this deal cannot sustain without a political framework. That for this deal to sustain, There needed to be an adoption of an inclusive, comprehensive political framework that would guarantee that Israel will not attack again, that no more raids and wars and genocidal aggressions will be conducted by the Israeli military occupation against the Palestinian people. I'm saying that because in the past 16 years, this is the fifth war that Israel wages against the Palestinians in Gaza. So Israel has a history of violating different agreements, and that's why we needed more guarantors, and we needed more, it's certain timeline for whoever will monitor and evaluate the commitment of every party. So now when Trump steps in, and we have to give him credit because it was only for Trump until the last moment that he put enough pressure on both sides to conclude this deal that focused on the hostages. But with Trump's focus hostages alone and not putting any attention to the Palestinians' political rights and to the Palestinians' sufferings, those like 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza faced a genocide. Israel is facing a case of plausibility
What
of
you're saying.
genocide.
I understand what you're saying. This is a deal, it's not a ceasefire, but is the deal
Yes.
over? Do you see the deal collapsing in 48 hours' time on Saturday?
I don't think so. I think he will sustain it until he releases all the hostages. I think Trump was very, very clear that he wants all the hostages home. We all know that Netanyahu and his like-minded military guys in Israel don't care. But Trump was clear that he wants to release all the hostages. My fear is that after the release of the maximum number of hostages, then maybe, yes, Trump will give the green lighting to Israel to destroy what is left, like
But
the
that
10%
will
that is
happen
left.
later. You're saying to me quite clearly that you don't believe there will be an end to the deal on Saturday. The
I don't think
fear
so.
is that on Saturday it will be over. You're saying no, it will continue.
It will continue for a while. However, we have to also say that Trump is, again, as he's an unpredictable person. Netanyahu is known for violating agreements. Yet, since yesterday, we had seen more facilitations into Gaza, more humanitarian aid into Gaza, more promises to enter, more tents and more roofs for the Gaza displaced people. So this was, if I may say, a positive sign from the Israeli side, where Hamas will, I think, now retaliate.
So just to be absolutely clear, the war is not going to resume on Saturday. Even
I
though
don't think
Israel
it
has
will
called
resume in
up
2 days.
reservists, you don't see the war resuming on Saturday.
Not on Saturday, but this is not a guarantee that the war will not resume later. Do you get my point? What I'm trying to say is that unfortunately, Trump is much more focused on the hostages rather than the political comprehensive deal. And we had heard him talking about his imposed creative ideas on the grounds, which have nothing to do with international law,
I'll
principles
come
of
to
human
his
rights.
ideas in a moment's time. But you're saying to me that the deal will continue, the war won't start on Saturday, in which case, let me ask you, do you believe 3 weeks from now there will be a phase two? Or is phase two when the problem will start?
That's my I mean fear that it's on phase two that we might face some setbacks, and that we might see more pressure on the Gaza people to make sure that they forcibly displace them, or maybe to put more pressure on Jordan and Egypt to take more people for humanitarian purposes. That could be a tactic, actually. That would be a tactic. Once the majority of the hostages are released, then on phase two negotiations, where we have to go into more political negotiations, more sustainability of a more comprehensive deal that would guarantee the withdrawal of Israeli military occupation from Gaza, that would guarantee the flow of humanitarian aid and the normality for Gaza to come back to life for the day after as part of the Palestinian state. That's where we can see more imposed realities on our grounds, where the Israeli military occupation is entrenched, of course, with the support of the Trump's creative illegal ideas.
Okay, that's very clear. In your eyes, the real danger is not Saturday. The deal will continue. The war will not resume in 48 hours' time. The real danger is phase two, which will be in 3 weeks' time. Will there be a phase two? Will the remaining hostages be released at that point? Will there be a permanent end to the fighting and a complete withdrawal from Gaza at that point? Let's then, against that background, come to President Trump's statements. He's repeatedly said America will take over and own Gaza and make it what he calls the Riviera of the Middle East. He said Egypt and Jordan must accept the Palestinian people from Gaza, and additionally, he's threatened to cut off aid if they don't. What do you make of those statements?
Well, Trump is a deja vu scenario for the Palestinians. In his past administration, he recognized Jerusalem as capital for Israel. He recognized sovereignty over Golan Heights for Israel. He not only defunded UNRWA, but he literally put the refugees file of any negotiating table. So the Trump is only focused on deals that are only inspired by profit. He doesn't put any attention to international law, to human rights, to the unalienable rights of the Palestinian people, and he doesn't really care about and he doesn't see actually the Palestinian people as a people who enjoy the right to self-determination. He looks at the Palestinians as minorities who should have certain, economic or social life standards, but he doesn't really view the Palestinians as people who deserve the right to self-determination. I am saying that because when we look at his recent statements now, yes, we all agree it's illegal. We all agree it's outrageous. We all agree it's basically an incitement for more war crimes against the Palestinian people and an incitement for more genocides, and not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. Forced displacement amounts to war crimes in international law. Yet, I think, unlike many people who are analysts who think that he is saying nonsense, I think we should remember that he is the president of the United States of America, and we should take him seriously. Because in his previous administration, he imposed strategic failures on our grounds.
Can I ask you this? Do you believe he really intends to take over and own and control Gaza? Because that would be imperialism, and the throwing out of the people of Gaza would be ethnic cleansing. So does he really mean to do that? Or are these leverages? Are they bargaining chips for some sort of negotiation he has in mind? Which of the two?
Well, it could definitely be a negotiating tactic where he is basically putting, a big stick of coercive diplomacy against the parties, especially the Arabs and the Palestinians. However, let's all remember that Trump now is in competition, a clear global competition with China when it comes to trade roads, when it comes to commerce, when it comes to profits rather than values or human rights. So if we look at the Gaza specifically and its strategic location, if he comes and really, rebuilds, invests, administers Gaza, then he can guarantee the trade roads coming from India through the Gulf world, maybe Jordan, through Israel, and then to Europe. And that is a competing strategy against the Belt and Road Initiative that China is leading. I don't want to say that this is his one and only ambition. No, he would also guarantee the security and the prosperity by investing in Gaza. I just want to also raise a point that for Palestinians, we would love to see the Riviera, see light in Gaza. However, the message should be that the Palestinians are the owners of the land. And in deal making and in, mega investments project, the biggest shareholder is usually the owner of the land. The stakeholder who enjoys the property should have a say. So that's why I would say, from a pragmatic point of view, that I don't really oppose his pragmatic, prosperous investments project in Gaza, but he needs to be reminded, he needs to realize that the people of Gaza are not going anywhere, and that the people of Gaza are basically the owners, and he should engage with the Palestinians in the first place.
Except the problem is he has not once, not twice, but repeatedly said that he wants the people of Gaza to leave. He's absolutely determined that they should go to Jordan and Egypt. So let's focus for a moment on the response from Jordan and Egypt. They've repeatedly said that they cannot, indeed will not accept the people of Gaza. But on Tuesday, just 48 hours ago, sitting beside President Trump, King Abdullah of Jordan spoke of the Arab nations coming together with what he called a counter-proposal, but he offered no details of that counter-proposal. So what do you believe will be the final Jordanian and Egyptian position? Can Trump arm twist them into accepting the Palestinian people? Can his threat to cut off aid ensure that they have to agree?
Listen, from a realpolitik perspective, yes, he can. Because he did impose very difficult facts on our grounds. You know, despite the rejection by the international community, there was a UN Security Council resolution after he recognized Jerusalem as capital. Yet, in reality, on the ground, we are witnessing Jerusalem acting as the capital of Israel. We are witnessing more settler colonial projects. We are witnessing annexation on the ground. There is no room left for the Palestinian state that the international community is still talking about. So while we had seen clear positions coming from the Kingdom of Jordan and Egypt, where they refused ethnic cleansing or they refused the forced displacement, and they said it really clearly. However, yes, we all know that he could use his coercive diplomacy, using his financial aid. We saw what he did with the USAID projects. The guy is very, very, he's coming from this colonial mindset in the 21st century, where he values and he weighs everything by profit rather than, any respect to international law or human rights to start with. But my hope is that really Egypt will host the Arab meeting by next week in 10 days, and that the Arabs will, with the, of course, help of the Palestinians, present a counter proposal, because Trump is a deal maker.
Do you have any idea what that counter proposal will be?
I think it will be much more focused on reconstruction of Gaza, with the PNA on board, with the Palestinian government, taking over administration, while of course the Palestinians remaining on the land in Gaza. This is going to be a scenario of reconstruction of Gaza, I think similar to the deja vu scenarios that we had witnessed in the different reconstruction plans with the help of the World Bank, IMF, and
Yesterday, both the BBC and Reuters both reported that President Sisi has threatened to cancel his US trip. I should be honest and admit no date has been set for his US trip as yet, but he's threatened to cancel it, according to the BBC and Reuters, because of concern about Trump's Gaza plans. Do you think that there is additional friction coming into the relationship between Egypt and America, which might not be in Egypt's interest?
Well, let's be again realistic. Egypt and Jordan enjoy peace agreements with Israel, and if anything happens, like any frictions, any provocation, can really destabilize this security paradigm on the borders of Israel. And this, I don't think Trump, neither Netanyahu, want to reach that level. However, I think the news that was spread through Reuters and BBC, which we did not see as an official statement coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt or the Presidency of Egypt. However, I think that, yes, they need more time in preparing this counter proposal, not only from the Egyptian side, but with the Jordanians and the Qataris, the Emiratis, and above all, the Saudis, because this is all, to leverage and to capitalize on the international coalition that Saudi Arabia
so President Sisi is actually not spoiling the relationship with America when he threatens to cancel his trip. He's looking for more time to come up with that counter proposal.
I think yes, and let's also focus that he did not really issue a statement. It was news, it's credible news, but it was not really an official statement coming from Egypt, so that will not affect, I think, the Egypt-US relationships. However, Trump was clear. He said, those are my ideas, and if you have other proposals, hand them in. So I think the Arabs got the message, and I think we had a lesson learned from the past experiences, where the Arabs now need to be united. They need to come together, of course, with the Palestinians on board, and they need to go to Trump with a counter proposal of how they envision the day after in Gaza.
Now, President Trump has made one further worrying statement. Last week, at a joint press conference with Prime Minister Netanyahu, when Prime Minister Netanyahu was visiting Washington, Trump seemed to suggest that in 4 weeks, America could possibly accept Israel's annexation of the West Bank. How do you view that? Because the West Bank is where you live in Ramallah.
Well, I'm not surprised. We had a past, difficult experience with Trump where he exceeded, yeah, I mean, he violated all basic international law or UN resolutions or any embedded rights that are guaranteed for the Palestinian people. On the ground, I live in Palestine. On the ground, annexation is taking place de facto. And yes, I think he is using all those, coercive diplomacy tactics to put more pressure on the Arabs and on the Palestinians to gain that to buy more interest for the Israelis, to make sure that this Israeli settler colonial project continues, to make sure that the bigger Israel and the quote unquote between parentheses the Judea and Samaria project come at the expense of the West Bank. He doesn't look at, again, the Palestinian people as a people, a nation who enjoys the right to self-determination. He is translating the Balfour Declaration, 100 years ago statement that looked at the Palestinians as minorities who can only enjoy some civil and religious rights, but never there was mention of any serious political rights as a nation.
Then let me ask you this. Where do President Trump's statements about Gaza, about forcing the Palestinian people to go to Egypt and Jordan, about the West Bank, where do those statements leave the hope of a two-state solution? Don't Trump's statements suggest that a two-state solution is not part of his policy, it's not part of his vision for the future of this part of the world?
That was very clear. That was very clear. And that's why if I want to look at Trump, Trump is not only provoking the Palestinians' rights, but he is also insulting and provoking all the international community who had been advocating for the two-state solution. And he is basically killing and eliminating the option of the two-state solution. What he is saying, what his ideas, which are very, of course, illegal, incentivizing war crimes, yet the whole project and proposal for the two-state solution is actually being attacked by Trump's vision in his prosperity plans for a new Middle East, basically, where he is changing the borders, where he is more focused on trade, commerce, and profits, rather than looking at peoples with rights. But the message is, and the lesson learned that should be learned from his Abrahamic Accords and the first phase of the deal of the century, that for peace, prosperity, stability, and security to sustain in the region, this will never be guaranteed unless the Palestinians are at the table, and unless the Palestinians' rights are guaranteed, and unless the Palestinians' political rights and their right to self-determination are, of course, safeguarded. Otherwise,
let me ask you one more question. Where does all of this leave Trump's dream of an Israel-Saudi accord? The Saudis have made it very clear that without a Palestinian state, they will not agree to a peace deal with Israel. Has Trump overlooked that? Or do you think Trump believes that he can force the Saudis to drop their insistence on a Palestinian state?
I think with Trump's blunt colonial coercive diplomacy style, I think he believes he is powerful enough to put enough pressure on anybody. However, he needs to realize also that Saudi Arabia is not just any state, and that they have enough capabilities and power to counter back with a decent proposal. And now, if we see the Arabs uniting with the lead of Saudi Arabia, I think that will come as a surprise to Trump, who is not, to start with, a politician. He's not a person who is, knowledgeable about, or who doesn't care, maybe he knows, but he doesn't care about international law and about how the international world order mechanisms should work when it comes to respect of states and sovereignty. Because when he says he wants to displace the Palestinian people, this is not only a war crime against the Palestinian people, but this is also an invasion into the territorial sovereignty of the states like Egypt and Jordan and others.
My last question, how do you, at the end of the day, view Trump? Has he made outrageous statements that are tantamount to a terrible mistake? Or is there a strategy behind all of this, even if it's not immediately apparent and clear? Which of the two? Outrageous mistakes or a strategy that we can't as yet decipher?
Well, it really depends on where we are looking at his statements from. From an Arab, Palestinian, conscious, legal, human perspective, of course, we will say it is outrageous, it is illegal, it is nonsense, it is criminal. Again, however, if we only look from a business perspective, if we only look from a deal-making perspective, pragmatic perspective, then yes, he is serious and he thinks he can. His statements and his strategies are not only when it comes to the Palestinians, but look what he's doing with Canada, with Mexico, with Europe, with China, with Russia. I mean, all his strategies are very much inspired by his pragmatic business mind, and not when it comes to deal making on political basis.
In which case, Trump has only been in office for less than a month. He has 4 more years ahead of him. If this is how his second presidency has begun, how worried are you about what will happen over the next 4 years?
I am very extremely worried, and that's why I am warning and saying to many of my analyst colleagues that yes, he is saying nonsense stuff, but the guy is serious. We have tried him before, and we should take him seriously, because otherwise he is capable of imposing facts on our grounds, unfortunately. And while the world reacts in rejections with rhetoric, with the civilized statements, on the ground, we as Palestinians, we all know that there is no more room left for a Palestinian state, let alone the racist, apartheid, settler terror policies that are taking place against the Palestinians, not only in Gaza, who plans to take and administer and own, but the West Bank. The people are suffocating in the West Bank.
Mr. Iriqat, thank you very much for your analysis. Thank you for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.